Welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. H. Melvin James spent his career in aerospace and defense. Then he retired to his Oklahoma ranch, where he's able to focus on writing and weave some of his life experience into his stories. Death in Tomorrow's Shadow is a detective novel and his third book for Fulton. So I'm guessing you've had a pretty good experience with Fulton Books.
Oh, yes. Very good. They've been very helpful. I appreciate their contract, especially where all the rights of the book revert back to me. I keep all the rights, and everything they do belongs to me after a certain period of time. The cover, graphics, all of that.
What inspired Death in Tomorrow's Shadow?
Well, I spent a year of my life on such an island. The book is about a remote Arctic island engaged in electronic surveillance. And so I tend to write what I know about.
Okay.
And that way I feel like the writing is a lot more realistic and genuine. And so I spent a year in the military when I was a young man on such an island, and it occurred to me that it would be an interesting background for a story.
Okay.
And so I wrote this story as my first attempt at first-person narrative. My previous novel was third person.
Okay.
And I've always been interested in the classic detective mystery stories, Agatha Christie stories, Conan Doyle stories.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to take a chance at writing first-person narrative and writing a mystery story.
So we have FBI Special Agent Rhett Bradley.
Yes, I intend this to be the first of a series, the first episode of a series of episodes.
Okay. And he's investigating a bizarre death on an isolated island near the Arctic Circle.
Yes, within the Arctic Circle and near the international date line.
Is that significant?
Oh, yes, it is. That applies to the title.
Okay.
Death in Tomorrow's Shadow is not a fictional, theoretical, new generation, dimensional thing. It is an actual place on Earth where you could physically be in the shadow of tomorrow.
Because it's at the dateline?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Well, it adds mystery to the novel. The detective is in the wrong place at the wrong time for his own best interest. He is on vacation, going to see his best friend in life who is on the deathbed, and he happens to be in Alaska in Anchorage when this death of a senator's son is reported on this island. So him being in that circumstance, they immediately send him to that island by himself. Usually the FBI agents work in pairs, but he's sent there by himself because he's available immediately. And there's a Arctic storm coming out of Siberia that he barely has time to get to the island before all flights get shut down. So he goes there and he finds himself confronted with people questioning his authority because it's a military base, but it's also technically within the United States, but not really inside of the state since it's so far in remotely located. So on that island, there are several intelligence agencies, civilian intelligence agencies that work together with the military, and all of those agencies are secretive even among one another. So they resist giving him information. And no one is sure of the circumstances of the young man's death, who happens to be the son of a powerful senator. So he's confronted with all of those complications as well as the blizzard.
And an illicit drug dealer.
Yes, there are petty criminals on the island, remarkably. who were under investigation at the time for, and these were civilian employees and low-grade military employees not involved at all with any secretive surveillance. They were in support roles, and there was only 3 of them on the entire island of a couple thousand of other people who had high-level security clearances. But these 3 people only had minimal security clearances, and they were there to, they thought they would be able to illicit drug sales there, but the general population of the island, being highly technical people with high degrees of security clearances, did not take to the drug peddling idea. So these 3 guys were desperate. They were originally suspected of being involved in the death of the young men.
Okay. And then on top of that, he's got all these other things going on in his life. He's got his best friend who died.
Yes.
That's who he came to see. His son's going to return from Vietnam. He's about to retire. And here he is on an island. He doesn't know who he can trust. And you say in your synopsis, he doesn't know if the victim was a traitor or a double agent.
Yes. And that isn't revealed until the end. The young man seems immediately to be involved in some sort of espionage. But the secretive agencies won't tell him if they were working for him or if they were watching him because they thought he was a traitor. All of those things are mysteries to him.
Do you wrap this up, or do you leave us hanging off a cliff at the end of this book?
Oh, this episode and all of my episodes will be completely wrapped up at the end of the book.
But Rhett may go on to investigate other things?
Yes, definitely. I intended this to be the first episode of many. And in the last chapter of this episode, I set Red up to retire from the FBI and then hang out his shingle as a private investigator in preparation for the next episode.
Nice. So are you developing a following?
I'm trying to develop a following. This novel, I would think, would appeal to people in the military, people in the intelligence agencies, everyone in aerospace and defense that work on such things as electronic surveillance equipment. And those are many hundreds of thousands of people when you look at the people who work for computer companies and radio companies and all of that. But moreover, I would like to see a following of the tremendous group of people around the world that just like a good whodunit novel.
Yeah.
Regardless of the setting and the background. The next episode, for instance, won't involve espionage at all. It will involve criminal elements, mafia.
Oh, I love the mafia. Endless tales can be told there.
Yes.
Under that umbrella. Do you go out and talk about your books?
Yes, I do. I get invitations from local libraries around the state. Get invites from book clubs.
How do you get those invites?
I have to pester them. I visit libraries and leave a calling card and tell them that if they've got book clubs that want to have an author come and talk about his book, then here's my card. Just give me a call. So,
okay, and that works.
It works once in a while. I mean, it's like visit 50 libraries and get 2 invites.
Okay,
it's a lot of shoe leather and that sort of thing.
Well, I think authors listening to the podcast need to understand that it's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of reaching out. I mean, yes, Fulton and Page and these other publishers, they do stuff, but you really do have to get out there on your own.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. And then once you're in front of an audience, I bet you love talking about your books.
Oh, sure. That's one thing an author has a lot of liberty to do. They know the book they wrote, so it's easy for them to talk about it. It's like a grandparent talking about their grandchild.
Yeah. And you know what? These book clubs, they love it when they have in their hands a book that they can read and discuss. and then have the author come in and talk to them?
Well, sure. The author of a mystery novel in particular could answer questions that they might not get out of the book. And if the author wasn't standing there before them, they might never know the answer.
All right. You are H. Melvin James, author of Death in Tomorrow's Shadow. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed the discussion.
A financial advisor for 53 years, Sam Galanis can't stand a lack of common sense. It has compelled him to write Rational Thoughts, Common Sense Improvement to Life in America. All right, Sam, what do you got?
For example, FDIC insurance. When it first came out years ago, it was 250,000. It's still 250,000, but inflation means you only have about 180,000 of insurance. So I said it should be inflation adjusted. That's just common sense. That's typical throughout the book. What I tried to do, what Rational Thoughts book is, it's a succinct primer focusing on common sense improvements to life in America, with each chapter ending in a recommended solution or course of action.
Okay, so give me some more examples. Something must have upset you for you to feel the need to write this book.
Well, yes. Mental asylums concern me. They've disappeared for various reasons. And it seems like the mentally ill have been shifted to prisons. Like, for example, Alice, in 1965, in prisons, we had 185,000 inmates, and today we have 1,900,000. And you have these people walking the streets or in prisons.
Do you suggest what should be done about that?
Yes. In one of my chapters, I said, bring back mental institutions.
Okay. Do you just go chapter by chapter? Each chapter covers a different concern that you have?
That is exactly right. I saw all these things. My background, I had a varied background, which helped me quite a bit, Alice. For example, I was a pre-med student. I got accepted to med school, never went. And then I went to law school and got my law degree, but never practiced law. I was an insurance adjuster. I was an area sales manager for Aristotle Onassis when he owned Olympic Airways. And then I became a financial advisor. So I was inclined toward a macro view because my varied background, basically. And I saw these things popping up, and I said, this doesn't make sense.
Do you have like a major concern? Like, is there one concern that stands above the rest?
Yes, it's our democracy fading away. Basically, Alice, if you want a pure democracy, the people that vote for a representative or senator nobody should be able to give money to a senator or representative unless they can vote for him. And what you have right now is you have a lot of outside money pouring into an election, and sometimes the locals wouldn't have wound up electing that person, but outside money does. So that's my major concern. The democracy is slowly being eroded by outside money pouring into elections.
And what do we do about that?
You eliminate outside money pouring into elections.
Yeah, and who calls for that? There would have to be. I don't even know how you would begin to change that.
You would just pass a law in Congress, which might be hard to do because they're all getting the money.
Right. That's what's crazy.
You know, I should be able again to donate money to the person that I can vote for, but an outsider in New York City or in the South or somewhere in the Philippines shouldn't be able to donate money to somebody they can't vote for.
What else you got there?
There's a bunch of topics. I address birthright citizenship. I think birthright citizenship, which means even if you're an illegal immigrant and coming to this country and your children are born here, they're automatically U.S. citizens. I think that's absolutely wrong. You're really rewarding someone that violated the laws of the United States by rewarding citizenship to their children, and that should be changed.
Are you an activist? Do you write your congressman or take action on any of these things that bother you?
I rarely contact my congressman. Occasionally I do something related to aviation recently because I'm a pilot and I fly Wings of Mercy missions when I can, which means we take patients from their hometown to a hospital someplace or bring them back from a hospital or hometown. I rarely write my congressman. In Southeast Michigan. My congressperson is a far left Muslim activist, so she's frequently next to Ilhan Omar on television. Rashida Tlaib, yeah, she's my representative. Yeah, she's not an objective, common sense person. One of the problems you have, Alice, with these people, and what I always look for before I vote for somebody: do they have a business degree, and have they ever met a payroll? When they have a business degree and have met a payroll, their experience and their outlook changes completely. Otherwise, they're just, if you don't have that background of having a business degree or matching or having met a payroll, it's much easier to spend other people's money.
What's next for this book now that you've written it? And let's see, you ask readers to reflect on their roles as citizens, consumers, professionals, and you want to empower people to contribute to the ongoing evolution of the American way of life. How are you telling people about this book?
Well, I have cards which I give people. I was on the Chris Voss podcast. Because of my age and generation, I'm not really good on social media, so I tried to do podcast, and thank you for trying to help me that way.
What's the Chris Voss podcast?
Oh, it's a well-known podcast that reaches about 45 million people. Once you do a podcast with them, it's never erased. You can reach it 10 years from now. And if you go to youtube.com and put in the title of the book and the author, it'll come up with a video trailer, and it also will come up with a Chris Voss podcast.
So how did you get on that?
Well, I was aware of him, and I applied to get on that, and he accepted me, and we did about a 45-minute interview a few weeks ago.
Okay, that's great. Are you going to be on any other podcasts?
I don't plan at this time, Alice, because I'm waiting to see the effectiveness of the Chris Voss podcast, and I'm going to wait to see the effectiveness of this to see if it helps. Basically, I'm being mostly altruistic. I didn't do this book because I really aspired to become a published author, or I was proud to hold my published book in my hands. I did it because I felt that each one of these bottom line solutions to common sense problems would help the American people. And I was driven by that. So I would look at some of these topics like college costs and regulations and mental assignments. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't common sense. Let's see if we can change it. So each book focuses on a different topic. And for example, in regulations, it's common sense that the less government, the better. The fewer regulations you have, the better. Regulations are a tax. If you're a small business owner and you're responsible for meeting all environmental, health, and other regulations, and they add regulations, and you're spending more time meeting regulations instead of trying to grow your business, and eventually you have to hire another employee to help you, and eventually you may have to cut back on what you're doing in your business or close up shop. So I think one of the things that President Trump, who has an MBA from Pennsylvania, by the way, and is a businessman, one of the things he proposed, and I propose it in the book, is that for each regulation that's passed, you have a cost-benefit analysis. Does it does it cost more money than it brings in, or vice versa? And the other thing I liked about the president administration, his policy is for every new regulation, he wants 2 taken off the books. But there's always a cost-benefit analysis. And that's common sense, because we're spending your money and my money and the taxpayers' money with ineffective regulations.
Okay. Well, Sam, I hope you get your message out there. Keep writing into those podcasters who might put you on. You said you got a YouTube channel. And are you doing any book signings, like right where you are in Florida?
I haven't done that very much, Alice. Maybe I should do more of that, but my schedule is so busy with so many other things like flying and this and that, and I haven't done many book signings, and we're going back to Michigan in a few weeks, so maybe I'll check into that in libraries when I get a chance. I have done some book reviews. But one with Midwest Book Review was very positive. Another one with U.S. Review of Books was sort of positive. And then another one I did recently with Publishers Weekly was more negative than positive, but I decided to let them go ahead and publish it anyway. But they're involved with Indie, INDIE. And what I found, Alice, is anybody involved with Indie tends to be incompetent or left, and it may depend on who you get as a reviewer. But one of the problems they face in trying to get the book reviewed by book reviewers is there's a real leftist bias out there, in my opinion.
All right. Well, you going to keep writing?
I don't have any plans at this time, but every once in a while I see something that should be changed, and I take notes.
And you can't help yourself.
I can't help myself. For example, the former representative from New York, who's now head of the EPA, is he?
Lee Zeldin.
He's a pretty good guy, but one of the things in my book, I want auto stop. I want to prohibit right turns on red because it's causing a lot of injuries and a lot of deaths. And one of the reasons that enable you to do this is auto stop technology in cars, where you come to a red light and you press on the brake and the engine stops. And the administration wants to eliminate that because they claim it costs about $2,500 a car, and they want to bring down the cost of a car. But it's also been proven that it saves about 7 to 9% in gas, which is a major thing. So I would say bring the cost of the technology down, which should be easily doable, and don't eliminate it, and prohibit right turns on red, which several municipalities have done already. So I don't agree with them on that, and I don't agree with the administration. And President Trump has floated the idea of easing restrictions on marijuana. I definitely am against that. Marijuana is a very powerful and dangerous drug, which is 30 to 40 times more powerful than it was 30, 40 years ago. And it's causing a lot of schizophrenia, a lot of psychosis. And if you notice, this is just conjecture, but if you notice, a lot of the killings, including Charlie Kirk, were done by people that happen to be transgender, but were on medications. And you sort of wonder what effect they have. So these are just common sense things that another one is endless wars, Alice. We're involved in a war in Ukraine. I didn't address this in my book, but the war in Ukraine was basically provoked by the West, expanding NATO eastward. That's a long story, but anyway, I said if you start a war or involved in a war in any way, maybe you should give the American people a say after 90 days of vote, whether you continue being in a war. These are things that are basically designed to help the country. Another one is minimum wage. You have minimum wage regulations all over the country, and some states have state minimum wage and local minimum wage. And then the politicians get involved after 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, and they say, oh, your minimum wage isn't enough, we got to raise it, instead of wasting time on productive things. Simple solution: if you have minimum wage, it should be local, because the cost of living in Elkhart, Indiana is not the same as the cost of living in New York City. It should be local and adjusted to inflation. That way you don't have this political football causing a waste of time on the part of lawmakers every so many years. Just common sense stuff.
Sam, it sounds like you have enough for another book.
Most of it is in this book right now.
All right. You are Sam Galanis. Rational thoughts, common sense improvements to life in America. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time, Alice. I appreciate your help.
Brittani Heinrichs has been writing poetry and children's books since high school, and now she's made a dream come true with the publication of her first children's book entitled Trina's First Day. Good for you, Brittani. Now, you're a mother of 2 boys under 4. Tell us about Trina the dinosaur.
She is just, a character that came to mind. Both of my sons love dinosaurs, and I wanted to make sure that the book would be gender neutral. So I figured, boys like dinosaurs, but I'll make the character a girl so that it can be enjoyed by all kids. And, that's where she came from.
What inspired the story?
My oldest son, he was about to start preschool, and he was real nervous about, being away from his dad and I was nervous about letting him go. And so I kind of wrote the story as like, you're not the only kid that feels these things and, goes through these emotions and all that. And so he really liked the story. And that's whenever I decided to further run with it.
Okay, so in the book, Trina is nervous.
Yeah. Just meeting new kids, being away from her mom for the first time, a new place, new experiences.
Take me through the book.
So in the book, Trina is starting her first day of preschool. And, she's meeting all these new kids and she's really shy. And then eventually, she meets several different kids along the way. But the first one she meets is Valerie, and she's very outgoing, very I'm everybody's friend type of kid. And it kind of brings Trina a little bit more out of her shell. And she just, her and Valerie get along very well. And then, throughout the day, she meets Tyson and Andrew, and then, learns that all kids are different and, school's to have fun and to learn. It's not a scary thing.
Nice. Were you able to share this book with your kids' preschool?
I actually already have, yeah.
Oh, yeah. How'd that work out?
They loved it. My son, he goes to preschool in a church here in our town, and the grandmother's house that I'm at right now, she's actually an elder in that church. And so when I received the copies that I had ordered, I took them one.
And you read the book and the kids liked it?
Yeah, they all seem to love the dinosaur theme, and granted they're pretty small, so their questions were simpler, but they seem to actually be interested in it instead of just listening to me speak. They seemed actually interested in the story.
What kind of questions did they have?
What's Trina's mom's name? What kind of dinosaur the teacher was. That was a lot of their questions, actually, was what kind of dinosaurs they were.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so Trina is a triceratops. And then Mrs. B, she's the teacher in the story, and she's a bronchiosaurus. Andrew is an ankylosaurus. Tyson is a T-Rex, and Valerie is a velociraptor. And then there's other children in the story that aren't, part of the story, but like there's a pterodactyl in there, and just different dinosaurs around.
That is adorable. Any ideas on how to promote the book?
I'm planning to do some readings and signings here in, my community and the community surrounding, the Southwest Kansas is full of a lot of small communities. And I grew up all around this area, so I know a lot of the different little towns and went to school in a lot of these different towns. And then, I'm wanting to do like some signings around town. My mother-in-law actually owns a business here, so we're going to put the book up for sale in her business.
Nice.
And then I'm hoping that Trina's First Day is the first of many in a series that follows Trina throughout her life and, her new experiences and things like that. That is the hope.
It was a good experience for you?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people who want to write books but just can't seem to get started?
Trust the process and trust that, what you want to do, it's your dream. And so no matter what the process looks like for individual people, as long as you're staying true to what you want to write and, the story that you're wanting to tell, then it'll be a good experience. And, just get started. That was my thing. I wanted to do this for, such a long time, and then I didn't, and I kept putting it off. And then eventually my husband said, just do it. You've got a story that that kids like, just do it. And so I did. And it was very self-promoting. It made me feel good about myself and about my abilities to not only write, but also to put myself out there.
That's great. It had to feel so good when that book came in the mail.
Yes, it did.
Great. You are Brittani Heinrichs, author of Trina's First Day. Thanks so much for talking to me.
No problem. Thanks.
Anaya Devi has always kept a journal, but writing her first book, Little and Lost, happened by accident. Anaya, what's the backstory here?
I quit a job that was not fulfilling me, and I had a lot of time on my hands.
So a lot of time to develop your main character, right? Rosie. Where did she come from?
Yeah, well, I think in my youth, I jumped from one passion, one goal to the next, just trying to fit into what everyone else wanted me to be. And then I finally realized, like, almost being 30 now, I was like, why am I chasing something that I don't really like? I have no energy left to chase, and it's not bringing me any passion. So I think I just reached a point in my life where I was like, this is not bringing me any joy, but also realizing that that's what we all do. We're all just trying to make other people happy all the time, or do things that we think are going to make us happy, rather than like just healing ourselves spiritually, physically, to get to a point where we can feel good where we're at right now.
Okay. So Rosie's story moves through broken systems and broken hearts. You write through body image battles, toxic love, and the noise of a world that never stops pulling at her spirit and draining the energy from her soul. Can you give me an example of, something that she's dealing with, or a situation she finds herself in, or that she has to work through in the book?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that stands out to me is she gets caught stealing alcohol for a party with her friends, and doesn't even want to go to the party. She doesn't want to be around these people who don't make her feel good anymore. But I think that story stands out so much because it's like we just fall into these situations that cause us more suffering, and we're struggling through it when we don't really realize how we got there. So I wanted to put that in the book so that my audience could recognize what we're doing every day that contributes to our long-standing suffering and unhappiness.
So she finds herself in a situation where she's getting alcohol for a party she doesn't even want to go to.
Yeah.
So what happens?
Well, she got caught by her parents, almost went to jail, but lucked out, and her parents talked them out of calling the police. And then she went home, got grounded, and then went back to her friends and snuck out of the house and continued down this journey. And then eventually she realized, like a month later down the road in this book, that this was she kept rebelling. She kept falling back into these patterns that were not healthy or not bringing her any happiness or joy. And she was just so sad that she wanted to end her life.
Does she take any action to pull herself out of this spiral?
She tried to end her life, and then she ended up at a hospital with a therapist, and that was kind of like the shift in changing her path, where she was like, I don't really want to talk to a therapist, but I'd rather get to know myself better and get to know what I do want out of life.
So she hits rock bottom before she's...
Right. I think it's just so easy to keep those patterns going because they provide us some comfort, but oftentimes those patterns are what contribute to the sadness that we feel and how unfulfilled we are. So I think I was really hoping to highlight that in the book so that myself included, I could step outside of that mindset and help other people step outside and just realize that we're all just hoping to get to a place where we can have joy. So where can we start right now with our choices?
Nice. Do people know you wrote this book?
Very few people. Yeah.
Who is your audience, would you say?
I would say people who are in the age range of Rosie, so teens to young adults, and maybe even mothers. But well, yeah, I guess I would say mothers. I wrote it with the intention of women being the main audience, being able to relate to something and without having to speak it out loud, to know that other people feel a similar sense of suffering and be able to just know that there's an answer, there's a different perspective. So, yeah.
And any thoughts on how to reach them?
I really just kind of wrote the book for myself. I want to share it with the world, but I'm not planning on this being what shoots me into the writer trajectory. Like, I have other books that I'm working on and hopefully will publish. And if I'm known for something, I'd really love it to be something that's under my own name and something I'm proud of. This was more like a healing journey for me. So
this was more of a cathartic experience for you.
yeah. I'm fine with this book growing. I think if it happens that way, that would be wonderful. I just didn't see it. I mean, when I see the book in my hands now, it's not exactly the way I pictured it. And I just think I have some resistance towards sharing it personally. But if it were, the universe wants it to be shared, then like I would embrace that. That would be. Readings sound great. I just don't know if I'm there yet to be able to talk about it without getting caught up in like the emotions of it.
Okay. All right. So you're going to keep writing? You're going to keep publishing?
Yeah, that's the goal. It is. I find it a bit hard to actually publish books. I have a children's book I'm trying to publish, but it's a lot harder to publish a children's book because there's so many.
I don't know, but it sounds like you're on your journey. It sounds like you're on to something. You're on your way, for you. And that's great.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. I have learned to love this book over the course of writing it.
Good.
Because honestly, I had submit the original manuscript out, not expecting to get anything back. And then I was like, oh, I guess I should actually publish this. So I kind of learned to love it versus just like loving it to start. And over time, I've just realized how much energy we put into single experiences while it all contributes to like our overall growth and journey here.
Anaya Devi, author of Little and Lost. Thanks for talking to me.
Of course. Thank you for taking your time out of your day. I appreciate it.
Ian Alexander Hutchins has been coming up with stories since he was 5 years old. As a young adult, he's dealt with chronic anxiety and clinical depression, but has continued to write, and now he's published Paradise Abandoned. You've been working on this story for some time, haven't you?
Paradise Abandoned was written almost 7 years ago. It did not take me long to write this. It was just one of those ideas that just like came to me, and it was just very clear. And I just had it down in a very short amount of time. There have been a few changes made over the years while trying to find a publisher. That was the big problem, was finding somebody to publish it. And when it was all said and done, I eventually just said, okay, well, I'm going to just have to pay for this myself. I never imagined this book being like a big success. That was never my intention when I wrote it. I just wrote it because I thought it was an interesting idea. What's funny is it's very different. It's still very different from anything that's available. I was displeased with a lot of the literature that was out at the time. And I thought we were all going to mature into other areas of, literature and ideas. And we were going to grow as a people, literature has only gotten worse as the years have gone on. I know I've sat on the sidelines and I've just watched. I cannot believe some of these books that have not only gotten published but published through like major publishers. Like it's just astounding to me. Spelling errors, grammatical errors, gaping plot. You could drive flatbed trucks through plot holes in some of these books. Terrible characters, terrible messages. So it really kind of made me realize not only am I in a league of my own, but I may, regardless of the way things turn out in my life, I may have been on a more righteous path. And I'm not saying I said it sounds pretentious, but I don't mean that. I'm not like patting myself on the back. I'm looking at it now and going, okay, you didn't chase money or popularity or fame. You did what you felt was right for you. So.
Okay, so what is Paradise Lost about?
Well, Paradise, it's funny that you said Paradise Lost.
Oh! That's Paradise Abandoned.
It's John Milton. Well, it's funny that you misspoke, because Paradise Abandoned was sort of written as a response to Milton, down to having one of the lead characters be named Milton. The way I ultimately kind of figured it as I was putting it together was, Paradise Lost was it was a treatment on biblical mythology. And what's funny, it's always funny when I meet Christians who they'll cite things from the Bible, quote unquote, but then you're listening and it's like, no, that's Milton. That's from Paradise Lost. That's not in the Bible. That was Milton's epic tragedy that he wrote based on, some of the passages from Genesis. So what I was thinking when I wrote Paradise Abandoned was, well, wouldn't it be nice to actually do a book that is sort of a play on all the different genres of not just literature, but mythology, biblical, historical. It's the intersection of all of these. It's treating them all as if they are all absolutely factually true and they all exist in this world together, as we've always been taught they do. But I was looking at it and I'm like, nobody's ever written a story that like takes all of this stuff and like puts it into one like book, into one story.
So one of your main characters is Milton.
Well, he is not Milton. His name is Milton, and I did that on purpose to evoke almost in a almost metatextual, where it was to evoke the person who this is all happening to, and you get the sense, okay, this is the individual who will take these experiences and he would one day write about them. I mean, granted, the way the book ends, it's like, oh no, I guess not. But that was me. That's me being, the ending of this book is just me being cruel. So
what's the storyline?
Well, ultimately you have a Union war veteran. That's the character with Milton, who shares Milton's name. You have a mermaid, you have a prince, and then you have another Union veteran who went turncoat and became like an evil sorcerer. He found his way to divinity, and he wants revenge on the United States for the Civil War, essentially, for what happened.
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter that his side won. He looks at the human cost and he sees the direction that humanity's heading in, and he's very displeased with the way things are turning out.
Okay.
So ultimately, that is the framework. But at the same time, happening parallel to that, we'll go over to the mermaid, who's the second main character. While initially she's pitched in the story as being the central lead, but eventually you realize, oh, this story isn't about her. She's a secondary protagonist. Her story is a darker take on the Little Mermaid fable, the Hans Christian Andersen. And I did that to not only poke fun at one's expectations, or what you could call the sins of our youth, but it was also to have where it's like, okay, we're going from historical, and then we go into the fantasy, like we go into the fantasy genre, and then as that's going along, it starts to take on biblical connotations with heaven and hell and things like that. And then eventually it all, like I said, as the story goes along, it all collides, it all into one, to where it shouldn't all work together, but it does. You start to realize just how, even though all these things are very different, they are all very much the same, but that's because they're all human. So
okay. Ultimately, what do you want your reader to walk away with?
I guess I would say that life ultimately is pointless. Life is utterly meaningless.
Is the message just life isn't worth living?
I wouldn't say that life isn't worth living. I think it's ultimately that it's all like the one character, the second. Well, actually, I guess he ends up being the primary antagonist. The last chapter of the book is his suicide note, and at the end of his suicide note, it says it was all for nothing. Those are essentially his last words to the world. I went to great lengths to publish this book because I had made myself a promise, and I wasn't going to give up. And now, as things have gone along and only just continued to get worse, despite my hard work, it's really all I had left. So I said, you know what? The majority of people will never get to have this. They'll never get to achieve something like this. Like I said, there's a spiritual component to this. It was not supposed to consume my life the way that it did. I thought that I was going to write it, get it released, and I was going to be able to move on to other things. Didn't think it was going to make me millions of dollars, but this was spiritual. This was a spiritual experience for me, and it's something that very few people will ever get to experience.
Okay, so that's something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Ian Alexander Hutchins, author of Paradise Abandoned. Thanks so much, Ian.
You have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Dannie Jackson survived a life most people could never imagine and wound up in prison where she decided to write it all down. Now she's published Pass the Pipe. Dannie, you say you were never involved with drugs or alcohol growing up. Then you fell for a guy in the military and wound up on the streets. What happened?
Yes, I did with my 2 babies. But before that, the upstanding citizen I did as a bishop, I never drank, smoked, did drugs, nothing like that. And so he said, me as the head of the household. So I listened to that. And so, my husband brought me up here, military, brought me up here to Colorado and stuff. And so he had to go overseas. And so while he was staying now, I had my kids and then I was 8.5 months pregnant, and the landlord came to me. He said, your husband hadn't paid the rent in 3 months. I said, oh yeah. I said, okay, just like that. And he said, what? I said, well, ain't nothing I can do. He said, you got to get out of here in 2 weeks. I said, okay. He said, ma'am, I ain't never met nobody like you. I said, you can't do nothing. You just started to realty. You got a family. And so I got to go. And so the next day, the girl that helped me move and stuff, me and my husband, she got put out and asked could she stay with us. I said, well, we getting ready to get put out in 2 weeks. Yeah, you can come and stay. And so that's how one thing led to another, and she was cussing in the house. And I said, I don't do that. I'm 26, she's 19. But she had a lot of sense. I was naive to the world, just the church and stuff. And so she said, but your husband ain't no good and stuff. I gave you. I said, but you got to go. And she said, but I can help you. And so I said, well, Dad always said, God put people in your path. So I had $6 to my name. I was working at Pizzeria, and I gave him my 2 weeks notice, my paternity. And so I gave my $60. And in 30 minutes, she came back with 120. I kept 60 and gave the other. I said, can you do this again? And before the night was over, she made almost $4,000 for me. And so and she said, you gotta go. You gotta get out of here. I said, okay. Listen to her, I said, she doing all this, she's helping me. So I guess she telling me something, right? Just again, I just couldn't believe this.
What was she doing?
She was doubling up the money. She was doing crack cocaine to rocks. And she said, I'm gonna show you how to do it, whatever. She said, but you got to get out of here. I said, okay. And my landlord, I gave him the rent and some. He said, ma'am, you can stay here now. I said, no, I gotta go. And so he said, oh my God. He said, oh my God, I still haven't never met nobody like you. I said, I thank you and I gotta go. And so then, making all that money stuff, my kids, she said, you don't need to be on the streets with your kids no more. You did this before and it happened, and you don't want to go through that again. And I said, you're right, you're right. So I did all that. My husband came back, said, you got all this money and stuff. I put the money in the thing. And I said, okay, again, my husband say, the man said the house, so listen, and forgive, and always forgive. And so I said, okay. And so he put the money in the bank and stuff. And eventually I got locked up. I asked him what happened. He said he gambled
So you end up selling cocaine.
and sold cocaine.
And you end up getting some money. He comes back to you out of nowhere.
Yeah, he came back and said that he was a compulsive gambler. He didn't want to tell me that and stuff.
And you end up going to prison for selling cocaine.
Yes. He paid $200,000 for the lawyer, and the lawyer, he said, you ain't feeling nothing. And so 2 years he was fighting the case for me. He said, you ain't never had a traffic ticket. He said, I'm fighting this for you. I was facing 100-some years. I got 25 years, and I did I think 19 something, almost 20 years.
You were in prison for 20 years?
Yes, almost 20 years.
What happened to your kids?
So the kids, he put the kids in foster home and he left. He said he couldn't live like this or whatever. But I just said okay, and nothing I can do about that.
How long ago was that?
It'll be 9 years, October. So I've been there and I wrote these books, and I'm reading 16 books, and children's stories and poems, and this is one of them.
How are you telling people about this book?
Well, I tell people, that I hope they don't ever get in a predicament like I have and stuff. And, the people's like, Miss Kitty, we like, well, they know about Miss Kitty. And they like, Miss Kitty, we ain't never ever seen nobody just so gullible as you. You here in the penitentiary, you helping people, you stop the fight. The police got on me. They said, you stop another fight, you are going in the hole. And I said, I can't see that. I don't like this. And so they, like I said, they look at me. And so when I got out, I didn't think I was ever getting out. So they told me, my case manager said, you getting ready to get out. I said, okay. And people was crowding around me, crying and stuff. They gave me papers to go to Willpower, how to get on SSI and everything. And I've been out since.
Are you going to publish all of your books?
Yes, I want to.
You have a heck of a story here.
I didn't even think I was doing wrong because I was turning over my money. I'm telling you, this just sounds so crazy. Who would believe anything like that? Because now that I, out and people was talking to me, teaching me and stuff in the pen, I was seeing how much wrong I did. So I started going to groups and stuff, listening to people's stories and stuff, and of what I had done wrong to them. I wanted to hear their side and stuff. And one of the ladies that was in charge, she got upset when I got out and I went to empowerment. She got upset and said, you can't be in here no more. And the girls in there, they said, no, she's helping us and everything. She wasn't nothing but good. She ain't like no other dope dealer. And so I said, it's okay, y'all. I never drank, smoke, did drugs, nothing like that. I said, I gotta go. And so when I was going downstairs to my trauma class, Miss George, she said, what's wrong, Danny? I said, I told her what the lady did. I said, y'all, that's your employee and stuff. I said, she got it right and stuff. She said, just continue going to trauma class. The students down here, they like you, they like your stories and stuff, and I'll help you. So she encouraged me about the book and also too. And so, like I said, the people that read all the books in the penitentiary, they encouraged me to go to these, they encouraged me to go to Willpower, Empowerment, stuff like that to get support. But when I went there, I met Miss Joyce at Empowerment, counselor, therapist. I told her about my books, and she helped me look and found Fulton Publisher.
Okay. Well, keep it up, girl. Dannie Jackson, author of Pass the Pipe.
But I wanted to say this one thing because you was telling me to get somebody help me. One of these ladies when I was catching the cab, her name is Ollie. And she told me she could help me make moves and stuff out of my books. But I told her, I said I need to hold off, but I want to see how Fulton Publisher is and stuff. I don't want to, because to me, they've been good to me. They helped me, so I want to see how this goes.
All right. Dannie, thanks so much for talking to me today.
Okay, you're welcome. And thank you for listening to me.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.